Daddy? You in here?
Seem to be somehow connected to the nationwide
Where the heck
pandemic.
are you?
We've received reports that victims afflicted with the infection show
It's
signs of
nearby.
increased aggression and...
Move everybody out of here now. There's a gas leak.
I have talked at great length about video game adaptations on this channel. When done properly, it is an awesome experience to step into the shoes of Batman in Arkham Asylum, play through the Telltale series of The Walking Dead, or even experience a video game platformer based on our favourite Disney cartoon. You would think that the material, concepts, lore and stories seen in video games would be prime material for the silver and big screens, but this is seldom the case. Yes, we have seen rare gems in the form of the Netflix adaptation of The Witcher, though this draws more from the original novels than the games, the original Resident Evil movie to a certain degree. But for every mildly enjoyable video game adaptation, there is a Doom, Street Fighter or Super Mario Bros. Around the corner. After so many disappointments, is it any wonder why most of us will look at the next upcoming video game to movie or TV adaptation and hold our breath with a "yeah, I'll believe it when I see it" attitude? Then there came The Last of Us, and 5 episodes in, not only has the show been a faithful adaptation of the original Naughty Dog release, it is a show more broadly symbolic of the current state of science fiction horror that brings us so many questions that just beg answering. So this is why The Last of Us may be one of the best video game adaptations ever made. First off, this video game essay will contain major spoilers for both The Last of Us game and HBO series. These are just one man's opinion, and I just wanted to do a video essay based on this series as kind of an experiment. I'd like to see what people think. Whether you agree with me or not, let me know in the comment section below.
Jimmy, I am warning you. No!
Very few games will affect me emotionally, but The Last of Us is one of them where I had to take a step back, re-evaluate everything before picking up the controller. For me, this began with the death of Sarah. The game does such a good job of introducing the character, putting the player in control of her up until the events of her death at the beginning of the outbreak. You are brought into the world of The Last of Us with the innocence of a child, an innocence which is questioned and returned to again and again throughout both the game and the series. The fact that we know from pre-released material, previews and trailers that there is a story between Joel and Ellie, we are immediately met with a sense of foreboding by being introduced to Sarah, to the point that when her inevitable death actually occurs and we are faced with a 20-year time jump, we feel the severance and intensity of Joel's grief.
Our enemy is a radical network of terrorists and every government that supports them.
Now, this is a personal opinion, but for me over the past 20 years, Western culture has become absorbed in violence, especially in our media, culture, movies and TV shows. It often seems like many shows would take the path of least resistance, going for the action-packed and violent outcome, and not thinking about the consequences. Often, we see shallow characters doing things for no motivation, other than to show scenes of prolonged brutality. Yes, we all seem to love the George A. Romero trend of zombie films continuing in the 2000s, and the bloodier the better. We ate up the post-apocalyptic. We did not want hopeful science fiction like Star Trek, fantasy like the Chronicles of Narnia, or horror that basically asked us to use our imagination. We needed to exercise our demons, so to speak. We didn't care if the characters had the depths of a toddler's swimming pool, as long as we were told who were the good guys and who were the bad guys. We coined terms such as the Walking Dead villain to describe antagonists that had no real other motivation than be shockingly brutal, often extending scenes of their brutality to uncomfortable lengths, to a point where we asked if the showrunners were actually trying to get that response from the audience.
But we ain't the only town. First they're saying it's just the South. Now they're going on about the East Coast, the West Coast. Holy hell.
In HBO's adaptation of The Last of Us, every act of violence seen comes coupled with a depiction of real-world suffering that asks the audience to question our own morality. It is a show that to me is representing an audience looking back on our obsession with violence in the media over the past 20 years and asking ourselves the question, what the hell have we been doing? The outbreak taking place in 2003, almost symbolic of a time where we were very much traumatized after the events of 9/11 and the subsequent Afghanistan and Iraq wars. For the majority of the first episode, we follow Sarah with an outstanding performance by Nico Parker. As we can immediately relate to her situation, she loves her father but is yet alienated from him due to his time being separated between being there for his daughter and providing for his family. A normal life scenario juxtaposed by implied chaos in the background as she makes the journey home from school, to the watchmaker's shop to get her father's birthday present, her visit to her neighbour's house, and ultimately her time alone at home. Yet, subtly in the background, Sarah's normal life struggles loom the signs of impending demise to come. Even to those who have not played the game, it is easy to see something is up. The uncomfortable tone of her journey home on the bus, the reaction of the watchmaker's wife, "Go home," she says, her neighbour's religious obliviousness to what is on the news. "3 nails and a cross," she says, and the pet dog's reaction to the old lady in the chair, then punctuated by the jets flying over the neighbourhood skyline. Sarah is innocent in all this, but yet we know something is wrong. This is, however, immediately rectified when we see Joel for the first time properly on screen. Yes, he appears very briefly before she goes to school, but this is the first real intimate scene between the both, and the last. "You locked the door for once," he says. And though she recognises things are not perfect, with the absence of a birthday cake, she is itching to give her dad the present. And even though it is a short scene, we can feel the warmth and love between the two of them as they watch the movie and she falls asleep in his arms. The phone call comes. Sarah wakes from her sleep and the chaos is unleashed. Yet the focus is still on her. Throughout the entire ordeal, we see Joel and Tommy struggle through the swarms of people as Armageddon is unleashed. The bombs, the riots, until the inevitable happens and we feel it.
Be okay, baby. Stay with me. I want to pick you up. I know, baby. I know it hurts. Come on, baby. Please. I know, baby. I know. Sarah. Baby. Don't do this to me, baby. Don't do this to me, baby. Come on. No.
Through Joel's agony clutching his dying daughter as she is shot, and Tommy's helplessness, as we bridge the passage of time, straight to Ellie as she enters Boston quarantine zone, surrounded by armed guards, wounded and traumatized, immobilized, brought to the clinic of a godless future of post-infection America. Innocence has surely died. We are then introduced to Tess, burning the bodies of the dead. Bodies wrapped in blankets, burned without dignity, like firewood. This is a world devoid of emotion, where the disposal of human life has become routine. This point is hammered home as Tex walks over to Joel and points out the body of a small child, hands bound and face covered in a hood, which he dumps in the fire without emotion or feeling. In that one shot alone, we see that he has become a broken man. We are introduced to a world torn asunder as the result of 20 years of infection, militarization, crime and abject poverty. We find that Marlene has taken Ellie to the Firefly rebel stronghold and is keeping Fedra off balance through a series of random bombings. We know something is different about Ellie, and obviously those who play the game obviously know the truth at this point, but for those who haven't, we still know something is different. Joel, now separated from Tommy and accompanied by Tess, has been double-crossed, all leading, within about 20 minutes of fast-paced narrative, to a shootout that goes south, resulting in them being coerced to take Ellie to a Firefly group out west. In exchange, they can have a car and parts they need to head to Wyoming. Is Tommy in trouble? Tommy at this point is all that Joel is concerned about, but yet Tess is much more open-minded. Your watch is broken. Joel is feared within his community. A different man to the soft dad figure we see at the beginning of the episode. He does not want anywhere near his world, and is visibly distanced from her. Yet Ellie's charm is nothing short of endearing. 80s means trouble, cold crack. Bella Ramsey will continue to ooze this charm throughout her depiction of Ellie. As much as she's been damaged by this world in which she inhabits, she continues to show that glimmer of innocence, a child in a cruel world. It is at the end of the episode that we see things come full circle, and the horror of Joel's experience is unleashed in one scene. This again brings home the Last of Us relationship with violence. For all that is implied, it is very careful when it shows anything violent on screen. It could have chose to show the shootout that went down, leading to them taking custody of Ellie. It didn't. It could have shown the execution of prisoners. However, this was just implied by what we see on the streets. I love Anna Torov's subtle performance as Tess. It is easy to miss her maternal actions as we see Tess' mothering instinct kicking in, hinting at the character's own backstory, which apparently was deleted from the main show, so I'm not going to go into it now just in case it is actually brought up later. It is shown in the way that she comforts Ellie with a touch as they are escaping, even in the way she shows concern if Ellie has a coat when they set out. It is almost as if Tess unconsciously recognises Ellie's importance, maybe not as someone who is immune to the infection, but her importance just as a child in her own right. As the three are spotted by a soldier, literally with his pants down, way out of his depth, and once again a lone danger to their escape, we see the tension build in Joel. Pedro Pascal's amazing performance shines as we see what he is thinking by his facial expression alone, knowing after Ellie retaliates against the soldier that things are going to go south, and in that moment unleashes his grief, frustration and desperation in an absolute barrage, killing the soldier with his bare hands, transfixed on how things went down with his daughter and reliving the experience. He is almost oblivious to the revelation that Ellie is infected, yet shows no symptoms and is immune to the virus. All Joel is thinking is not again.
Our luck had to run out sooner or later.
You going on?
No, don't! Don't touch me.
Holy shit. She's infected.
Joel.
Episode 2 had to do a lot of the heavy lifting and introduced the third main character of the show, which is the environment and the infection, in essentially the situation. It is striking that out of the zombie type shows that I have seen over the years, or even where we have warring factions in science fiction shows, you always see the good guys and the bad guys. Throughout the first episode of The Last of Us, we do not see one infected, apart from the initial outbreak, which is more surrounded by the anarchy of humanity than anyone actually seeing infected on screen. Our first real glimpse of an infected comes in the form of an innate dead body mashed up against a wall in one of the tunnels, yet in Tess's reaction we understand the threat. Then, as the band walks through the ruins of Boston, it is Ellie that understands through foreshadowing more about the infection and the different types of infected, in theory, than Joel and Tess, even though she has no first-hand experience of dealing with the infected. Again, The Last of Us uses the old school horror trope of not showing too much on screen to scare the audience, relying on the subtlety to let tension build. We only hear the small screeches of infected in the background, though noted by the two veteran characters, but yet ignored. Ellie flips between two sides of her character on a knife edge. This is in response to Joel and Tess finding out she is infected. The tenderness is withdrawn, and they become immediately afraid of her due to the infected bite on her arm, not able to believe what they are seeing. Stop talking about this child as if she has a future. In that one line, Joel is not commenting on just Ellie, but also commenting on the treatment of children in general throughout the world they now inhabit. There is no ability for a child to be in this world. It is implied within the show's lore that children are abandoned because they slow down the groups of survivors. This is making a statement of humanity itself. What are we without our children? Futureless and condemned. Ellie herself was abandoned by Miranda, orphaned and turned over to be raised by part of the military. Ellie is a survivor, and this is reflected in her attitude towards Joel and Tess. Yet in the next scene, as they enter the library, that childlike mentality comes shining through, even though it is once again savaged by the environment. Though the distance between them is prevalent, the spark is still there. Joe may be telling himself that Ellie is just cargo, but the father that wanted to protect his daughter still lies within his DNA. As he protects Ellie throughout the journey, he sets the boundaries, but it is Tess who sees her importance, even though it takes her own demise to do so. As much as Joe loses through Tess's death, the spark of love and respect between him and Ellie has been ignited before the end of episode 2.
This was 3 weeks. I was bitten an hour ago and it's already worse. This is fucking real, Joel. You've got to get this girl to Tommy's. He used to run with this crew. He'll know where to go.
No, that was your crusade. I am not doing that.
Yes, you are. Look.
It is the start of episode 3 where we see Joel building a stone monument to Tess and Ellie standing up for herself. That Tess's demise was not her fault, and that we start to understand that vulnerability is the foundation of the relationship. Through matters of circumstance, all these two have now is each other. We know there is part of Ellie that feels guilty and responsible for what happened to Tess. We know there is a part of Joel that blames himself for letting Tess down, for not being able to protect her, yet all they have from this point on is each other. Sooner or later, they will have to address this, who they are and what they have been through. They're on the journey now, and there's no turning back. In a surprising turn of events, the episode flips to an intriguing dynamic to the story of Bill and Frank, and possibly one of the best on-screen depictions of a same-sex relationship I have ever seen. Much like his counterpart in the game, Bill is introduced as a hard-ass, a survivor, a person willing to do almost anything to survive. He is not going to be rounded up by the New World Order jackboot fucks. He was going to make it on his own. And through his initial scenes in the episode, we come to see that Bill does pretty good for himself, commandeering the town and eating good food, surrounded by good furniture. He has captured a bit of the old world within his space, and he has done so from his lone wolf, no nonsense and no compromising attitude. It is by meeting Bill and Frank that we see the sparks of the ongoing theme of The Last of Us. This theme is love, and is present and reoccurring throughout the show. When we first meet Frank, he is dirty, lost, hungry and alone, but yet smiling, as though he understands that Bill is a dangerous loner who likes being that way. He can see right through his exterior to the character's vulnerabilities. He knows he has met someone who is going to be significant in his life. This leads to a beautiful exchange between the two characters, as Bill tends to Frank's physical needs, offering food, a shower, some new clothes. Frank sees right through and tends to Bill's emotional needs, to the point where the character breaks down and we can see the humanity in his person, and we, the audience, cannot help but be moved by his connection. When watching the developing relationship between the two, I found myself questioning how lonely it must have been to have the feeling that society does not always understand you, and how much it must hurt to want to reach out to another who's just like you. Bill might be a hard ass, but he is also the loneliest person in the world. The tender love story deviates from the plot of the game, as in the game Frank leaves Bill to find a better life. Yet this change pays off really well, as it teaches us the lesson that foreshadows what Joel and Ellie need to learn, what the rest of humanity need to learn, that survival is not enough. You have to have something to live for, and only love can serve that purpose. This becomes more evident when we come back to Joel and Ellie and learn about what happened to both Bill and Frank. Through Joel's saddening by yet another loss, it is in this point that he embraces the reality of the situation. Though there are rules for Ellie to follow, some for her protection and others for his, we can see the relationship start to grow. Joel is noticeably amused by Ellie's reaction to being in the car for the first time. As we saw with Bill and Frank, the spark of love is igniting, of course in a different way. Yet, in the background of Ellie's childlike ways, we still see the survivor, as she is the one who ensures the both of them shower, spots the guns on the wall, and takes one for herself from the drawer.
I hate cliffhangers.
Where did you get that?
Back at Bill's. I mean, all this stuff was just lying there.
What else did you get?
Here, this make you all nostalgic?
This is actually before my time.
Right.
It's a winner, though.
Oh. I'm sure your friend will be missing this tonight.
Mm-hmm.
It's light on the reading, but it's got some interesting photos.
Now, Ellie, that ain't for kids.
Whoa! How the hell would he even walk around with that thing?
Get rid of that.
Well, hold your horses. I want to see what all the fuss is about.
Why are all these pages stuck together? I'm just fucking with you. Bye-bye, dude!
It is in watching episode 4 that I really decided to do this essay, because this is the episode I really feel hammers home the larger themes that The Last of Us has to comment within the realms of science fiction and horror, or even television and film culture in general over the past 20 years. Though we have not exactly seen society crumble, we have seen the chipping away of certain values and testing of our humanity through various world events. This is reflected within the desensitization that we have seen within the media. Again, the show chooses wisely how much on-screen violence is shown, and even though, in my opinion, the ambush scene from this episode plays out a little better in the game, it still hits the same notes. But once again, even though there are violent scenes within this episode, it is more within the characters' motivations that we see the true reflections of what is actually going on. None other is more represented than the character of Kathleen. At first she appears as a one-note villain, hell-bent on revenge, because she has been hurt after the loss of her brother. Yet this has led to her becoming vacant, devoid of a character, an embodiment of a predisposition with violence on screen. She does not care about the motivations of the people she has harmed, and as leader of the resistance that has overthrown the oppressive federal regime, in doing so has destabilized society to a point of anarchy. Yes, Fedra was oppressive, but in many ways it was a tough regime that has kept humanity going for the last 20 years. This again brings home the theme of episode 3 in a distinctly different way. If you have nothing left to live for, what is the point of surviving? This is ultimately reflected in the fate of her and her people, as they succumb to the infected, blindly following a leader hell-bent on their own petty vengeance, even when the vengeance is against a child, destroying our future for the sake of our petty squabbles. How often have we seen this throughout the real world, throughout real wars, in our real history? The scenes of victory reminiscent of many around the world after the fall of brutal regimes, only to be absorbed by successors who are no much better. Those who collaborate and made the decisions to survive being rounded up and killed, soldiers shot in the street and stabbed multiple times, a visual nod to the downfall of Caesar, who was stabbed 23 times, one for each perpetrator. This juxtaposed with the growing love and tenderness between Joel and Ellie, as we, along with Joel, warm to her personality, as she experiences an adult magazine for the first time and has a hilarious reaction, indulges in old music and shares so many puns from her pun book. Yes, these scenes are ripped directly from the game and expanded upon in the episode, but they're endearing nonetheless. As we meet Sam and Henry in episode 5, we see the furthering of this theme of love shining through the anarchy amplified by the showrunner's decision to make Sam disabled. Though the two groups have an uneasy alliance, you can understand and immediately identify with their motivations, and seeing Sam and Ellie just being children again and Joel and Henry looking on like two proud father figures is just sublime. But the ultimate conclusion of this, that is the real message hammered home, that through our blindness, our willingness to follow such paths as vengeance and ignore the dangers of the world, it is always the innocent that pay the ultimate price. And this is reflected painfully in the savage end of this episode as we see Sam's fate. My blood is magic. When we find that Sam has been injured after the downfall of the townspeople, we desperately want Ellie's blood to be magical. We desperately want there to be an effect. We have shared the joy in their childhood together. We have seen them become children again. We have seen the dynamic between Henry and Joel become fathers again. We want this for Ellie. We want her to grow up, have a normal life. And we know if we've played the game how much this is going to be reflected in Joel's actions later on. Minor spoilers ahead. The love for their innocence is growing in our heart, and our hearts are broken as we see Sam succumb to the disease. And to protect Joel and Ellie, Henry does the unthinkable, killing his infected brother. And knowing that Sam is no longer in the world, in that moment you know he's lost everything. He has nothing left to live for. So tragically and mournfully he kills himself. The closing scenes of episode 5 are heartbreaking. We see the savagery of grief between the two characters. And as a person who has experienced grief myself, I know that feeling. There's nothing to be said. Both Joel and Ellie are equals now. And the journey continues. And as dangerous and brutal as the society they live in, that bond of love that they have is stronger now than ever before. I personally can't wait to see the next 4 episodes in this season. There's been many a point where this show has actually moved me to tears. I've had some great discussions with friends. I love looking into science fiction, into stories, whether they're video games, whether they're films, whether they're TV, and deep diving and looking into the bigger picture. The Last of Us is a commentary on our relationship with each other and our relationship with society. And to a certain degree, how other shows have handled this relationship. If you take the premiere of The Walking Dead, for example, and how much we see of the zombies within the first sort of hour of that, there's very few infected shown in the first episode of The Last of Us. It's all about the human condition. How these characters represent us, represent our humanity, and what we would choose to do in the face of the gravest of circumstance. This was very much a theme that's hammered home in the game. And those who have played the game know the outcome of this story and how it progresses throughout the sequel. So I just wanted to talk about it, because I think it's a brilliant adaptation, and I think it's very much a show that is indicative of the times that we've been through. We've been through a couple of hard years, and it's been a difficult time. One of the reasons for me starting this channel was a form of healing, and I thought that the way in which they follow the themes, they could have chose to just make another zombie film. They could have chose just to make another sort of film devoid of emotion, but they didn't. They took the idea, they took the original themes of this show, and they've made something sublime out of this. And it's probably one of the best shows I've seen in the last 10 years. So that's my opinion, guys. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. I am going to be doing further videos. I apologise for the disruption to the schedule, but I have been working on a couple of things for the channel that have kind of gone in different directions to how I expected, and I wanted to make sure those videos are done properly. It's pointless putting a video out if it's not done properly, and I want it to be done and done well. So there's a few video projects coming out in the next couple of weeks. I have put on the community board a post that I'm hoping you guys will be interested in, because I would like to do a top 10 Master System games coming up very shortly, and I'd like to know you guys top 5 or top 10 Master System games, so that if there's games that I'm not aware of, I can take a look at them, and hopefully we can basically construct that top 10 together, and be a bit of community involvement, which I thought would be really cool. So thank you very much, guys. Thank you for liking the video. Thank you for subscribing. I will see you very soon. I'm the Blind Gamer Jared Walters. Take care. Love you lots.